not even breathing hard. I gotta figure out how to get these comments to stay on the screen. Let me know if the treadmill, I've got the phone on the treadmill, if because they're like making contact with another, this is like way too loud on your guys' end. Let me know, I'll figure out somewhere else to put it. But I'm about halfway through my rest day steady state, and I realized that this could be a good way to consistently get in live streams, is just to hit two birds with one stone and go live whenever I'm doing my off day cardio. So every fourth day we might do one of these if this goes well. So dude, also, if anybody pops in here that knows how to get the goddamn comments to stay on the screen, please let me know. Need to get my cardio back up. I've been lacking. Yeah, it's kind of same. I definitely find that my work capacity is so much higher. Two stones with one bird. Yeah, I find my work capacity is so much higher when I include some steady state on a week-to-week basis, and that translates pretty directly into successful hypertrophy phases because I have the work capacity to just fit in more volume per session. And yeah, it's always translated pretty directly for me to have some dedicated training to keeping my work capacity high. I've done some reading into like kind of what programming looks like for endurance runners, and there's this concept of my only cardio is with the old lady. You might wanna do some extra, my man. But there's this concept of your like aerobic base, right? Which is this idea of long duration, extremely sub-maximal cardio to create the base from which difficult training is built. So in the periodization of an endurance runner, you don't need any more cardio than that. In the periodization of an endurance runner, more often than not, you'll have like a peak, just like a strength athlete would have a peak. Obviously, we're peaking endurance qualities rather than strength qualities, but the same concept applies. What do you think is more genetics, endurance or strength? I would say it's pretty similar. I would say that I did not get the best endurance genetics out there. Back when I was boxing, I would run every single day for 2 to 3 miles. Very consistently. I ate clean. I would do my boxing training after school. I did a tremendous amount of work, and I never got to the point of what I would consider cardiovascularly elite. And part of that was a lack of periodization within my cardiovascular training. And part of that is I just think I've got a higher capacity for strength and let's say like fast twitch capabilities than I do slow twitch capabilities. So I would say they're similarly genetic. They're just kind of opposite ends of the coin in some ways. But yeah, within programming, you are so inspiring. Sending love from Morocco. Well, thank you, man. I don't know about inspiring. I'm a fat guy on a treadmill right now, but I'm glad I'm glad that's inspiring. But yeah, there's this concept of like your aerobic base is something that's like kind of like the equivalent of GPP, where you're doing really low intensity for long intervals. Would be interesting to see what a 500 plus bencher could do in a boxing ring. The correlation between how much you bench and how good you are at boxing is not great. I've kept some of my explosiveness, but goddamn, the gas tank needs to come up a little bit if I were to ever get back into a ring. You think it's true when they say that the more muscle mass means you burn out faster? Okay, that's a very good question, right? So I would say on some level, yes, right? Muscle mass has a high oxidative demand, right? So past a certain point, especially if it's not relevant musculature, perfect example is if we are talking about boxing, there's only a certain amount of leg strength and leg development that's beneficial, and then any level of hypertrophy past that is just a high oxidative demand and a high body weight that you have to move around the ring without a ton of additional benefit, right? Yeah, and ask Anthony Joshua. Yeah, man. If you look, there are some guys through history who have been, I would say, definitely above average levels of muscularity and maintained a very above average gas tank. Right, Evander Holyfield, being a guy who lifted weights, was very muscular and had a pretty solid gas tank for a heavyweight, especially because he was coming up from cruiserweight, which makes it a little easier. But I do think that carrying more muscle, just from the perspective of you weigh more and it's not helping you to weigh more in that capacity, and also that oxidative demand. There's a point of diminished returns, and then there's a point of moving backwards to where you're never going to get into what I would truly consider fighting shape. Past a certain level of muscularity, to get into truly fighting shape, you would need to actually atrophy to some degree, right? Like a perfect example is what Hafthor Bjornsson did. There was no way he was going to get into remotely reasonable fighting condition at 400 pounds. To get into fighting condition, he actually stopped doing much resistance training at all, allowed his body to atrophy, and it allowed him to become that much more efficient, right? Because what was standing between Hafthor and being a better boxer was not muscle, it was not strength. It was his endurance and technical capabilities, as well as lacking general explosiveness. YouTube is being super buggy right now. It says you have 2 live streams going on. Well, I canceled the first one because it wouldn't let me rotate my phone. Because I started the live stream on a vertical setting. It said it was locked. So that's probably why there's a second one. Although I'm not sure how there could be 2 live streams because I only got 1 phone. But yeah, I mean, I think Hafthor would be a perfect example of realistically appraising what's standing between you and being better, and knowing that just because you're really good at something doesn't mean it's going to benefit you at the level you attain, right? So allowing that excess strength to detrain and taking that training economy and directing it towards weaknesses was one of the many things he did a lot better than Eddie Hall, in my opinion. Oh, but what I was talking about earlier is you have this concept of your aerobic base within endurance training. And I've just been experimenting with, I've made videos in the past talking about how maintaining a high NEAT, so a high general energy expenditure. Hafthor won because of reach. I don't think it was only because of reach. He had the better gas tank of the two. He actually used his jab. I thought that was a pretty big discrepancy between the two. Rather than just winging right hands and not setting them up with anything. Yeah, no, I don't think that was the only reason that Eddie lost. I think that even if they were the same height, Hafthor was the better prepared of the two. But yeah, I've talked in the past about how maintaining a high general energy expenditure is very helpful for maintaining not only a good rate of recovery, because you're bolstering your blood flow throughout the day, so your rate of recovery might be a little bit better. Just maintaining a high NEAT, so a high step count per day, keeps you in much better shape than you would be otherwise if you only did your resistance training and were otherwise sedentary. So you get like a cardiovascular boost from it. And again, just like I talked about the benefits of doing my off-day steady state cardio, that being in better shape then lets you fit more volume into your training, which turns around and translates to more hypertrophy, which then translates to more upper end strength. So it almost starts with work capacity, right? If we think about the traditional, Eddie should have got to the ribs instead of just trying to land to the head. I do think he underworked the body. I wish he would have set something up. I know that he mentioned that his other arm was impaired from lasting issues from the bicep tear, but he was winging that right hand and it was coming close. And if he had put any work into setting it up, like you said, go into the body a little bit, it's like the old Roy Jones song, Body Headbangers. You got to set it up by some shots to the body. Should you do cardio before or after your leg workout? It depends how much cardio you're doing. I think that if it's a very moderate amount of cardio, throwing your cardio prior to training can just be an easy way to trick yourself into being fully warmed up. If it's pretty comprehensive, I might do some of it beforehand and some of it after. But I do like, if it's a manageable amount, doing my cardio prior to training. Yes, I'm just slightly fatigued, but it's not like I'm busting my ass on my steady state. And that way, when I go into training, all I have to do is more specific warm-ups rather than having to break a sweat, because I'm already sweating coming in. But yeah, if you think about like the traditional model of periodization, right, which if we kind of go, okay, I'm back. So that's the 3-phase model of training, is that we get the muscles bigger, we strengthen the new bigger muscles, and then we express that via a single and a peaking phase when we try to get our technique as refined as it can possibly be. I would speculate that you could potentially argue there's a fourth phase of generalized work capacity and building up your work capacity, your cardiovascular capabilities enough to where you can really optimize that hypertrophy phase, and each hypertrophy set you hit is going to be limited by your musculature rather than by your work capacity or your cardiovascular system, so your lungs. Okay, cool. I want your opinion on this. What is your opinion on movies that... you motherfucker. Demetrius, get the fuck out of here. I do cardio to warm up and get my heart pumping. Yeah, no, I think it's a really good idea. If you kind of look around to what is warming up, right? There's only really a couple things we're looking for. We're looking to get our core body temperature up, because raising our core body temperature both lowers our risk of injury as well as increases our ability to output force. So basically breaking a sweat prior to training. And then we're looking to maximize local blood flow again, because this can help with force output, decrease injury risk. It also just feels better to get a light pump to relevant musculature before you start lifting. And cardio is a very simple way to do that. Even just 5 to 10 minutes of cardio prior to when you are planning on starting to lift. I think A, you can derive some work capacity benefits from it, and B, it makes warming up a lot more simple and concise of a process, because then once you finish up your cardio, you've broken a sweat, you've raised your core body temperature. Okay, we're going to squat. Well, in a perfect world, we get under the bar, hit a set of 10. If that feels a little junky, we take the bar for another set of 10, and then we start gradually adding weight and working our way up to a working set, right? So that's the perfect world, as we do this generalized warm-up of some form of cardio to raise the core body temp, and then we do these highly specific warm-ups of exactly what we're trying to get better at. Sometimes that's not viable, right? So from taking myself as an example, I would have a very hard time getting under a bar without doing a little bit of upper body mobility, right? So maybe we have this cardio, we have our specific warm-up, but before we get into the specific warm-up, I have to do some banded shoulder dislocations or something similar, right? So we add on to the specific warm-up based on a needs basis. Another example would be, let's say someone can get under the bar just fine, but the only thing that stops them from doing a highly specific warm-up would be that their ankles, just doing bodyweight squats and then squats with the bar and then squats with one plate, their ankles just do not get moving. They stay stiff. So maybe between their cardio and their high specificity warm-ups, they might do either some static stretching for their ankles or some seated calf raises as some active mobility. So we build the warm-up based on this idea of the bare minimum is raise the core body temperature and then do your specific warm-ups, and then whatever the specific warm-ups don't address is what we build into the warm-up from there. And then we're always looking back over our warm-up and saying, well, do I still need this? Is this still an issue? Because we don't want our warm-up to be this thing that expands and expands and expands with time until it's this endlessly long endeavor that takes just as long as your training, right? Just as we add things in on a need basis to the warm-up, we should also be looking to take things out that are no longer an issue, right? So for a little while there, my ankles were probably lagging behind in mobility. So I needed to do some, I probably did about 3 minutes hanging out in the bottom of a third row squat before I would start my squat training. But I got to the point where, wait a minute, this isn't a deficiency anymore. The specific warm-ups of squatting the bar and then squatting one plate is now enough to get my ankles moving. There's no reason to spend all of this time prior to training hanging out in the bottom of a third world squat if that's no longer a deficit. I think with cardio, I do 3 to 4 minutes, and I don't jog. I run with my full body. Yeah, man, I think that cardio is one of those things where it's like, especially if we're doing it as an adjunct to our lifting, the most important thing is that we like it, right? Because we're going to derive whatever amount of work capacity is helpful for getting stronger. We're going to get that from any dedicated cardio for the most part, whether it be HIIT cardio on a bike, steady state on a bike, wind bike sprints, walking on an incline treadmill like I like to, the elliptical. All of these things are going to be able to get you into good enough cardiovascular condition to gain the benefits. So at that point, it's more about what you enjoy, because that's what you're going to stick with and that's what you're going to adhere to. Is swimming good cardio? Or would that just fry your body? No, swimming is great cardio. One of the big benefits, so let's just say incline walking, for example. One of the huge benefits to this, other than just improving your aerobic base, which is going to let you handle more work in your training, is that because we're walking on this treadmill, we're stimulating blood flow to the lower body. The lymphatic system doesn't have a pump. It relies on muscular contraction to drive that fluid up out of your legs against gravity. So basically, we can increase the amount of blood flow to our legs and speed up our recovery just by walking. We don't walk on our hands. So we don't get this idea of, hey, doing steady state cardio is going to flush blood flow to our upper body and improve our recovery there. That's where swimming is a unique benefit, is when we swim, right? Just like walking serves as both cardio and active recovery for the lower body because it's stimulating blood flow, swimming would do the same thing. Yes, we're improving our cardiovascular base, but B, we're actually increasing the amount of blood flow to our shoulder joint and surrounding muscles, and it's going to act as active recovery just as walking on an incline might after a leg day. So if you do a brutal leg day, and then the next day you make sure that you hop on a treadmill and do a 30-minute steady state walk, you're going to notice that the speed at which your DOMS goes away is much greater, right? And the same thing could very easily be said of swimming for the upper body. So I think it's awesome. I live in Three Forks, Montana, so it's not something I really have the ability to do. But I do think swimming is a form of A, cardiovascular conditioning, and B, active recovery is awesome. I've always wanted to get a ski erg, actually, for a similar reason, because you can do like butterfly ski erg, kind of like the butterfly stroke in swimming. And again, it can be something you do on your off day to speed up the recovery of your upper body, just like how I like to do the incline walk on my off days to speed up the recovery of my lower body. Hi, Odie. He wants his dinner. I think I'm probably a little late on giving him his dinner. Yeah, swimming just gasses me out so much. I wish I could do laps like I used to. Yeah, man, it's just like anything else, right? So if you spend time away from any given stimulus, you're going to become less efficient at it. So as you ease back in and you're less mechanically efficient, it's going to be easier to accidentally overdo it. When you're really mechanically efficient at something, it's easy to kind of make sure that you stay in that range of not overdoing it. But when your body is kind of out of pattern, it can definitely be a little difficult to keep that fatigue under control. I like doing a sled drag for cardio. Yeah, that's another one where we're stimulating a lot of blood flow. There is no eccentric loading, which is where most muscular damage happens, which makes it a perfect exercise for an active recovery selection, right? So if we do some sled drags, we're doing a lot of work to pump blood to the quads, but because of that lack of a negative, we're not getting that additional damage. So it's definitely a really good tool for speeding up a recovery. I know Stan Efferding has John Jones do those quite a bit as a form of active recovery for that same rationale of just excluding the eccentric from your training when the goal is active recovery. Lots of people with sleds also do like a series of upper body movements of like face pulls with the sled, rows with the sled, stuff like that. Again, the same idea of loading without an eccentric phase to stimulate blood flow on your rest days and to speed up the recovery of the upper body. Would doing a daily 10K step count count as increasing conditioning? Yeah, absolutely. I've got a video I made quite a while ago talking about the importance of NEAT for powerlifters. NEAT is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Basically just your step count, right? And maintaining a high step count basically automatically maintains a base work capacity for you. It acts as a certain amount of built-in active recovery, as well as just being generally helpful, right? We see decreases in all-cause mortality in daily step count all the way up to 10,000, right? I have a question for knee pain, stuff I should do. That's really specific. I'm not a physical therapist, right? And never having seen you lift, that would be very much a shot in the dark. The biggest thing is just good load management, right? So oftentimes, if we're getting pain from a given lift, it's because we're either doing too much too quickly or we're underprepared for what we're doing, right? So take that for what you will. The biggest tool we have in pain management of joints is better programming. Better movement quality can absolutely help. Better accessory selection can absolutely help. but better programming is king, right? Better load intensity volume selection is going to be the main means of improving symptoms. Oh, and yeah, sled drags are awesome. They're very good for both active recovery and the reduction of knee pain. I think that's something that the knees over toes fella has been parading for a while that I absolutely think is a great idea. We're developing strength towards the lockout, which is a position that we're relatively undertrained in. Yeah, I think they're good. Getting a squat session in right now. Everyone here is my training partner. Best of luck, my friend. Make sure they're deep. All right, let's see, what do we got? Got about 14 minutes to go, so I'll be here for another 14 minutes. Blethen is doing strongman, so he gets to use figure eights because you get straps in strongman. You're a fake powerlifter, which means you don't get straps. I always knew my knees and hips felt good the day after sled drags, but knees over toes guy confirmed it for me. Absolutely, man. I think they're just one of the best active recovery tools we have because it's the simplest way to do exercise without eccentric loading. There's lots of different exercises that lack eccentrics, but the sled is the most standardizable, quick to set up way to do active recovery in that way. One of the things I highly recommend, backward sled drags are awesome because they drive a lot of blood flow without a lot of damage to the quads. Forward sled drags are awesome because the same thing could be said for the glutes and the hamstrings, is we're pumping them full of blood without doing a ton of muscular damage, which can help speed up our recovery. But the one that is forgotten, right? We got forward, we got backwards. Best natty supplements for peak androgen and test. D3, I mean, the only one that's going to be really meaningful is if you have a D3 deficiency right now and you remedy that deficiency, then yes, your testosterone levels will go up. Oh yeah, there you go. Lateral sled drags, that's what I was getting to. We got forward, we got backwards. Doing like a sideways karaoke sled drag flushes our adductors and abductors with blood, and it also acts as a reasonable little bit of extra training stimulus because lots of people aren't fitting in enough adductor volume, and I honestly think that a lateral sled drag offers a really good option for some additional adductor volume if someone doesn't want to have to find somewhere to put Copenhagen planks in their program or go hop on the adductor machine. I think that they offer a really good option. Also, do you do boxing or MMA? Well, I used to box prior to getting into powerlifting and strongman. That was my jam. Yeah, I'm big on lateral sled drags though. Copenhagen, you dip. Yeah, obviously. No, I really like Copenhagen planks, although I've always thought the name was funny. Definitely, in my opinion, the Copenhagen planks, or especially the more advanced version of a Copenhagen plank, the one where you move and have a significant range of motion, are probably the best option for adductors for a home gym, in my opinion. Can you do a backflip / could you ever? No. So when I was about 230, I had a confirmed 38-inch vert, measured on a Vertec. So I absolutely believe at that period in time I had the physical capabilities of a backflip, and I tried to learn many times, and I just could not get over that mental hurdle of being upside down. I couldn't get over it. Things you really want. Let's see. Belt squat is definitely something that Max and I are looking to save up for. We were thinking leg press, but Kirsten kind of is leaning towards a belt squat, and she is also going to pitch in for this, so she absolutely gets a say. Yeah, I don't know. Leg extension, we're going to keep an eye out on like the local like gyms closing, going out of business type of deals. If there's a nice looking leg extension, we'll get one of those. I think we might get a leg press rather than a belt squat, but we will see. Definitely a leg extension at some point. And then the last really big piece, I think, until we're done, would be actually there's two more things. Max wants a combo rack, like an ER style competition rack, so that way he can prepare for competitions out in the garage in a specific manner, which I can't really blame him for. I don't know how we're gonna have enough space for it, but we'll fit a combo rack in there somehow. And then we also need some kind of chest supported row machine. I think what we're going to do is just like we're looking out for gyms going out of business and like to secure a leg extension, we're probably going to look for a chest supported T-bar row just because it's a quick and easy option. I need to get a back extension machine. Maybe look into getting a glute ham raise instead of a back extension because they offer the back extensions, but then you can also do GHD sit-ups and full glute ham raises and train your knee flexion. I think that they take up a little bit more space than a 45-degree back extension, but they also open up a lot more options as far as exercises you can do within a home gym setting. Leg press seems like a better option than a belt squat. See, lots of people say that. Lots of people would beg to differ. I think that there's this notion that belt squats are inherently more specific than a leg press is, which I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think that there's more things you can do on a belt squat machine. Like you can do split squats pretty easily. You can do rows. You can do a whole lot of things on a belt squat machine that like are nice options. It's easier to introduce band resistance to like a Rogue belt squat machine, for example. But that being said, I really like leg presses. If there's a leg press where I can easily load like a full range, they absolutely have been one of the best squat accessories for me personally. The leg extension or the leg press at prime, I've always been able to get into a very deep position that very closely mirrors the bottom position of my squat, and I've always seen really good carryover from that as a squat accessory, so a squat variation that isn't limited by the lower back or stability. Leg presses have always filled that role really well for me, surprisingly. Is Max still training at that new gym, or does he train in the dungeon? Max actually usually trains in town. There's just a couple of things that we have within his program, such as the leg press, that have been pretty instrumental to his recent progress, and he doesn't want to risk throwing off that progress and dropping those accessories. So the leg press is probably the most concrete example of added in some slightly wider stance leg press work for him. We saw some very good increases to his squatting strength, and now he's at the point where he's prepping for another powerlifting meet, and he doesn't want to risk slowing down his progress, switching to training in a home gym and having to try to find an effective substitute for that leg press. Will he be competing at Raw Nats next meet? No, so he's doing a local USAPL meet this October that we just started prep for, and then he will be doing Raw Nats. You have to hit a qualifying total, so for each weight class, they have like a minimum total that you need to hit to qualify for nationals. This year, actually Max's last USAPL meet can qualify him for nationals, thankfully, and it's more than likely, it is above the qualifying total, and I think if you're top 10 or something to that effect, not only do you qualify for Raw Nationals, but you also get a primetime slot. And his current total that's already qualified him for nationals might get him a primetime slot, it might not, which is why we are doing this meet in October to make sure that he secures the ability to lift during primetime. For legs, I just do squats. For me, it hits all the muscle groups. Yeah, man, I think that squats are a very comprehensive leg exercise. And if you're training for general strength qualities, just being good at squats kind of checks that box, right? It's tough to find a good raw squatter who doesn't have extremely strong legs. Golden tidbit, fellas, don't front squat in socks on concrete. Almost dropped 3 plates on my throat. Yeah, that sounds pretty dicey. I've never been comfortable lifting in socks on anything other than rubber. I get scared. Even conventional deadlifts on like a wooden platform sketch me out if I'm in my socks. I need to go put on some grippy shoes. The platforms at Prime, the gym in town, are wood, and I refuse to pull on my socks even on those, because when in a conventional stance, I'm creating lateral tension in that bottom position. my feet do gradually start to slide apart, and feet sliding with a lot of weight doesn't sound like a good equation to me. Thoughts on handstand push-ups, deficit handstand push-ups as an overhead accessory. So it's a nice motor pattern that lots of people find to be comfortable and pain-free. But the issue that arises is a difficulty of loading, right? So one of the things that we look for when we're assessing an accessory is how precisely we can control the load, because that's going to let us do adequate volumes and it's going to make progressing easy, right? What makes a pull-up nice is that we have ways to make it easier and harder if body weight doesn't seem to be an appropriate load, right? So we could use a band assist to make body weight easier if body weight is too heavy to get an adequate volume, or we can use a weight belt or holding a weight between our feet to make body weight heavier if that's not enough weight to be an adequate stimulus. The issue with handstand push-ups is that we don't really have good load control in either direction. We don't have a good way to scale it easier other than doing like cheaty kip reps, which is hard to quantify, because if you do like band assisted pull-ups, as long as you're using the same band every time, it's numerically the same. If you do kipping pull-ups or you do kipping handstand push-ups, you can't quantify the amount of assistance, so knowing whether you've achieved progressive overload is very difficult. And there isn't really a practical way to make handstand push-ups heavier because there's not really a way to hang weight off of yourself, right? So it's like, yes, they're a good motor pattern that feels really nice, but due to a lack of control in loading, I don't rate them very highly as an accessory. Yeah, don't think about scoliosis as something that holds you back. There have been world champion powerlifters who have scoliosis, and it hasn't held them back within their career. I think that there's a lot of negative. A lot of how people talk about scoliosis is overly negative, and we know that how people are communicated to about their like back positioning impacts how much pain they perceive, right? So it's almost like a duty that is held by clinicians to be more cognizant of what they're saying to people, because if you tell someone that they're going to be in pain for life, their likelihood of being in pain for life increases. If you tell them, hey, there are people who have scoliosis who are elite world-class athletes who are pain-free, suddenly their chances of being pain-free go up, right? Because we know that the pain is a lot more complex than just something is wrong, so it hurts. There's a very complex interaction going on between your psychology and your physiology that produces what we know as pain, right? So don't be down on yourself for having scoliosis ever. There's people who have squatted a hell of a lot of weight with scoliosis without being in a ton of pain. So definitely don't hold yourself back in that regard. All right, a couple minutes to go. I gotta cut my hair. I found overhead press helps my handstand push-up more than vice versa. Absolutely, that makes sense, right? So if we have a task where we don't have good load control, variation with better load control is often a good way to build it up. So that's why I think pull downs are a decent accessory for pull-ups, is they let you do a downscaled or an upscaled version of the motion with good precision, which is then why it's going to maybe be a helpful auxiliary motion. I do think the handstand push-up may have benefits of stability, but it's hard to quantify. Works, so I agree. Plus, if you want to challenge stability, a really easy way to do so is dumbbells, right? Dumbbells are one deviation less stable than a barbell. So if you perceive that you're going to benefit from slight instability on a vertical press, one of the easiest ways to create that slight instability without artificially limiting your loading too much is to just use dumbbells. Does Max plan on staying natty forever? I don't know. I don't think that's his plan, but he's quite young, so definitely for the short term, absolutely. I know he really wants to start working his way up there in terms of placings in the open in the 308 class at USAPL Nationals, because Max is aware that even if he does choose to go the PED route, spending more time natty isn't a bad thing, right? It just means you have to get more efficient with your process and really know what you're doing to get stronger. rather than using a crutch. I'm sorry. And yeah, very quickly, any high-level tested athlete that transitions to untested very quickly becomes a high-level untested athlete. So the commonality isn't necessarily, oh, he's been on for longer. It's how good of a job are you doing with your variables, and then the PEDs would hypothetically boost that, right? So there's no rush. There's people who have transitioned pretty late from USAPL to untested and still seen a tremendous amount of success. It's more about how good you are at powerlifting than it is anything else. Let's see. Love you. Well, thank you, man. That's very nice of you. So I might start doing these regularly, as long as you guys don't feel like they're spam in your feed. I might start just each time I have a rest day and I go to do my steady state cardio, just tossing up my phone over here, going live. It gives me something to do to pass the time, because I do get kind of bored sometimes doing the old steady state. Steady state is definitely my preferred cardio, because I've always felt like if I do HIIT cardio, it's just a little bit too taxing to where I don't get the full recovery benefits I'm looking for out of a rest day. Though I get great boosts to my work capacity, I do think it's a little bit too taxing. Whereas I find that steady state cardio kind of gives me the best of both worlds, where I develop my work capacity. It shows up in my training that my lungs don't limit me in a hypertrophy phase, but I also feel it's restorative, right? So the morning after my rest day, if I did steady state cardio, I actually feel better for having done the steady state cardio, not more fatigued. Whereas the same isn't always true for HIIT for me. Let's see what this said. If I can get it to show up. How do things go into the scheduled location? I do not understand. All right, we got 3 minutes to go, boys. We've almost made it. You hear them coming. Who do you hear coming? There is someone behind you? Is there now? I think he's sad, secluded Sam. Nah, I'm pretty happy, man. I enjoy my solitary life. Thank you very much. Triceps mog your biceps? Yeah, it's because I don't train biceps. I do think they're going to grow just from how much work I'm doing on stones, and hopefully soon to be doing on sandbags. You get a decent amount of bicep work out of those, whether it be stone pick and loads or sandbag carries. So I expect my tiny biceps to get slightly bigger just from that added demands and training from the sandbags and the stones. Not that those are the most effective ways to grow your biceps, but it's more than I'm doing currently, because I do absolutely jack shit for my biceps other than my pull downs and my rowing. Sam, you are not following. You're damn right I'm not following, my man. Can't wait to bench 405 so we can have a dedicated arm day. Yeah, you're not getting a fucking dedicated arm day. You're getting some curls at the end of your upper days, buddy. For those of you unaware who aren't in the Discord, Demetrius, the guy I coach, I've cut him a deal. I said once he benches 405, then I'll let him get some bicep work to act as some external motivation for him to get that 405 sooner, because I know he wants giant arms. '22s, baby. How about you get 20-inch arms first there, Demetrius? Then we can talk about 21s, and then maybe we can talk about 22s. I don't think I have 20-inch arms at this point. Like you said, my triceps are pretty big. The biceps, not so much. I guess my arms are probably about 19 inches. Hopefully, like I said, from doing sandbags and stones, I'll get some easy peasy bicep growth out of those, and it'll put me to 20-inch arms. That way I can just maintain that forever. When's the Bald Omni-Man Sheather arm day gonna happen? I don't do arm days, my man. Fuck training biceps, not for me. Maybe we'll do a Bald Omni-Man and Sheather leg day. That sounds more fun. Measured mine are like 17-ish inches. I'm surprised they're not a little bigger, man. It looks like you have very big arms. Must just be good insertions. 8-hour arm workout? Nah, 8-hour leg workout, my man. Whatever it takes. Yo, dude, my left bicep is bigger than my right bicep. How can I fix this? Just do more unilateral work. Any bicep training you do should be done unilaterally loaded, and then whatever discrepancy you have between sides will go away. I want them Nick Walker arms. Fucking me too, man. If my arms look like Nick Walker's arms, I'd probably bench 700. What's your favorite lift? Honestly, it really changes with what's going well. I'm really liking my stone loading right now. Like, so Atlas stone over bar, I enjoy. Historically, obviously, it's my best lift, so there's been plenty of times where I would say bench or overhead press. Those aren't clicking as much as I would like right now, so those aren't my favorite. I'm enjoying deadlifts and stiff legs right now, so maybe right now my favorite lift would be my stiff legs from the floor or my my Atlas stone loading. Thoughts on Dr. Mike saying doing less is always better than doing more in terms of recovery? From a physiology perspective, I totally understand what he's saying. I watched that video and that kind of stood out to me because anecdotally, it's not entirely what I would agree with, right? Because a perfect example would be there's lots of powerlifters who all they do is just their resistance training, right? They just do their squat, bench, deadlift, accessories, and then outside of the gym, they are extremely sedentary because they think that's going to optimize their recovery, right? And having coached a lot of people like that, I can tell you in my experience, those people do not have the best recovery because they're not doing enough to maintain a work capacity, right? So I think it's a little bit more complicated than just, oh, less work is less to recover from. Boom, pow, better recovery. The rate at which you recover is influenced by how good a shape you're in, right? So the people I see who have the best recovery are the ones who maintain some level of NEAT, right? So like 10,000 steps per day. Those people recover better than the extremely sedentary ones. So I think that relationship is more complex than purely less work equals better recovery, because the speed at which you recover is influenced by the amount of work you do. Yeah, like that's something. There's a guy, his name is Carlos Reyes. You can follow him on Instagram. He's a very high-level 242 powerlifter who's also a full-time firefighter, which means he has to stay in good cardiovascular shape all the way through a powerlifting peak. He doesn't have the leisure of letting himself get out of shape. And through this, he's found and posted a lot of very interesting information about how much maintaining work capacity actually improves rate of recovery and how it can be a net positive if it's intelligently structured. Do you aim for a certain heart rate while doing cardio, or is there another metric you use? Generally, what I look at is I fix the incline and I fix the speed, and I progress my performance metrics rather than reactionary metrics. So rather than trying to hang out in a certain heart rate range, I try to just make sure that gradually with time I'm able to walk a little faster for my 45 minutes or on a slightly higher incline. As long as I get gradually better with time, I know my condition is improving. And then sometimes once I get burnt out on a certain style of cardio, I will swap it to something similar. Similar but different enough to be a novel stimulus, and then I'll make progression in that, because I'm not trying to become a marathon runner. I'm trying to just drive forward work capacity. So there's no specificity to my cardio. It's not like my goal is running, so the best way to get better at it is to run. My goal is just general cardiovascular adaptation. So whatever I enjoy, as long as I'm making some week-to-week progress, cool, that's my cardio. And then when that week to week progress stalls out, I might swap to doing the stationary bike and then looking to make incremental week to week progress on that instead. I'm planning to buy a bench press in my back garden because I like benching and it helped me with everything in my upper body workout. Yeah, man, I think a bench there's nothing magical about it. It's not better than any other exercise, but it's a damn good tool to have at your disposal within your training, right? Because certainly when we're looking at only calisthenics, we have some real limitations in once we reach a certain level of development and we only have calisthenics at our disposal, the reps have to climb or we have to start progressing to some very difficult variations, which makes the ideas of progression a little bit more abstract. Whereas when we have a bench press at our disposal, we can just increase load for the same motor pattern. So rather than this abstract concept of progression from movement to movement, we can just progress loading on a singular movement across time and easily quantify the rate at which we're getting better. I aim for a resting heart rate of about 120 to ensure bulk is going well and recovery is optimized. I think that's a good target heart rate, anywhere from like 110 to 130, and then hanging out in that threshold for a solid chunk of time, I think is a very good protocol for active recovery / steady state cardio. Do you like street lifting, weighted calisthenic sports? Not really my cup of tea personally. Nothing but respect for them. They're obviously very high level strength athletes. Just not really my cup of tea. If your resting heart rate is below 150, you're not bulking hard enough. Facts. Now there's some high quality bro wisdom right there. I appreciate it. All right, I'm gonna go do during cardio. I thought you meant resting. I'm gonna go do some spreadsheets. Thank you guys for tuning into my live. I appreciate y'all.